The World Championships for fly fishing make its way to the U.S. about every 10 to 20 years. And this year we are in luck because they will be held in eastern Idaho within the Golden Triangle of fly fishing. And today you're going to find out all the great resources you need to know to check out this event and up your game this year. Hey, this is Dave, host of the Traveled Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid, grew up around a little fly shop, and now we're traveling all around the country, checking out new destinations. Glade Gunther, Team USA member and events coordinator for Team USA and the U.S. Angling, is going to walk us through the events this summer that they have going on in July with some of the famous waters out in eastern Idaho. We're going to find out where they're traveling, how all these events are coming together, and what you can do to get involved and check them out this year. Plus, we're going to get a few tips out of Glade in the process as we jump into this and talk about fly fishing, competitive fishing, and what you can do to improve your on-the-water experience today. This episode of Traveled is presented by Yellowstone Teton Territory, where you can explore great fishing, hunting, hot springs, and much, much more. All right, let's get into this one. Here we go. Glade Gunther from flyfishingteamusa.com. How you doing, Glade?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for setting some time aside today to talk about Team USA competitive fly fishing. I think this is always an awesome topic because we've had a number of episodes out there, and they've been some of our biggest. I was just looking back at the past year, and Gilbert Rowley, who I know isn't necessarily, I don't think, on Team USA, but he has a connection to some of the guys, and his episode was one of our largest episodes of the year. And so we always find that. I think that Euro nymphing, I think sometimes you hear stuff about it, like people are like, oh, what's competition fly fishing? But I think it's really important because there's a lot of fly fishing advances that come through, I think, what's going on there. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about who you are and what your connection is to all this, because I think you're a big person behind the scenes there. But before we get into that, and maybe some tips on, fishing and all of that, maybe talk about first, how'd you get into fly fishing and what's your first memory?
Oh boy. Wow. First memory. My first memory of fishing broadly was on the Little Bear up near Hiram, Utah. My dad took me fishing up there when I was, I want to say 10 or 11 years old. I'm pretty sure I was just throwing a spinner or something, just rod and reel, not fly fishing, but hooked into, again, memories are distorted, of course, but what seemed like a monster brown trout. And I suspect it was only like a 16 or 18 inch fish. But frankly, that really got me hooked. So it was just, and my dad's not even a fly fisher at all, or a fisherman at all for any intents and purposes. He just, he had me out in the woods, in the wilderness and on a river, and we were just standing there, not in waders, just went wading, and it was a great time. We caught fish and it was fun. So that really got me hooked in fishing. And then fly fishing, I had a scoutmaster of either, I can't remember, it was when I was 12, 14 years old, that really just kind of got me introduced into fly fishing. Frankly, we started fishing the Bear, really kind of like tight line worm fishing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, almost no weight, really just lobbing worms into holes, letting them get down, really trying to play the sensitivity game when you feel that bite. And we used to wreck rainbow trout doing that. It was a blast. I haven't fished worms in a long time, but if I were to go try to replicate that, I think I'd probably have great success. But anyway, that kind of got me going down those techniques in terms of how to fish with very little weight, how to really use the rod to catch fish, not just bait. And then that really just transitioned. Actually, a future scout leader really got me into fly fishing. So that was probably when I was 16 years old, give or take. And then really just took off from there.
Nice. And where did I guess we could probably fast forward a little bit here, but where did the Team USA, where did all that connection start for you?
Oh boy, I actually was the president of a fly fishing club at a place that I worked. And this would have been back in the mid 2000s range. And during that time period, I had invited, or I'd gotten to know Lance Egan and Devin Olson in that time period. So of course, kind of anchor people within the U.S. fly fishing community generally, and specifically in the competition fly fishing. But I'd gotten to know them, and they had a event where they held a competition here in northern Utah, and they were looking for volunteers, people to come and watch, measure them catching fish. And I'd been introduced to Lance. I'd gotten to know them, and I volunteered to recruit from amongst the populace of the club that I led. And that was really my first exposure with competitive fly fishing.
There you go. What was that event they were doing?
They hosted, there was I think they called them at the time regionals, but basically anglers from all over the country came to Utah. We set up on the Provo River, on the upper and the Victory Ranch section, if you recall, if you know where that is. We had a couple sectors there, and then we fished a lake as well. I think Smith Morehouse Lake, and I had some grayling and rainbow trout in there. Again, I remember meeting just people from all over the country and thinking, well, this is great. This is fun. Watching them fish, talking to them while they're fishing, getting a little different insight. I thought at the time that I was a pretty good fly angler. And then being able to watch them and learn from them as I kind of experienced that was really kind of eye-opening. Seeing different techniques, different flies, things that I'd never really experienced previously, I think really just opened my eyes to a world of possibilities beyond what probably the average fly fisher who will go out and spend, I don't know. I mean, your average fly fisher probably fishes 6 to 8 times a year, really. And it really just broadened my vision of what fly fishing could be in terms of how many fish I catch, what expectations are for what a good day of fishing looks like. Of course, all the days fishing are good days fishing, but
Yeah, I hear you. No, I imagine two of the best, two guys that, are kind of top of the game. And we obviously have a lot of these episodes where we have people that are, professional fly anglers essentially, right? We had Mark Raisler on recently, and he was talking about, he's on the Missouri, and he was talking about how every day still to this day, he's been guiding for 25 plus years. He still spends 10 minutes and casts the yarn rod, the Echo yarn rod.
Yeah. I have one in my basement. I was moving some stuff around the other day. I'm like, holy cow. Here's my old school. I mean, I don't know how long ago I got that thing.
Right. Yeah, the yarn rod.
Boy, ages ago. Yeah.
And I think that's what separates, I think, people like Devin, Lance, everybody else is that, they're doing it full time. They're at kind of top of the game. So now you had that connection. Talk about now, what are you doing for Team USA? What's your current role?
Maybe just a really quick rundown. I think that was probably back in 2006. I probably competed in an event the first time. I don't know if it was 2007, 2008. I went to my first national championships in 2009. I didn't make the team at that time, but I went. I felt really happy winning a session. Like you basically y'all line up in a river or lake, whatever it might be, and you get assigned a piece of water. And I happened to catch the most fish in my little sector in that moment. And of course, again, every little win gives you a little more confidence to take the next step and maybe participate a little bit more. And then another couple of years of competing. And I recall, I think I made Fly Fishing Team USA in, I want to say it was 2012, Bend, Oregon, my recollection. And then really it's kind of just been a cut and paste since then. Every 2 years, minus COVID issues, we basically host another national championship. We select another national team. That's based on the accumulation of points over basically a 2-year cycle where we compete, in different regions. And then we've kind of restructured it in recent years to kind of try to be a little more sensitive to the amount of time and travel required for people who are interested in the sport. But that kind of brings us up to today, right, where we have a team. Fly Fishing Team USA has a team of 15 anglers that are, again, based on the way that we calculate points and rankings across the country, are the best.
Right. They're the best in the last 2 years and there's a big separation because, we had some of the people that were on before, when you go back to when Fly Fishing Team USA wasn't quite as organized and they weren't winning. They were actually losing a lot, right? And we've talked about everybody there and we know so I think this regional 2-year thing where you get points basically gives us the Team USA a better chance to win, right? Is that kind of
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that's true. And we tend to make small tweaks every year. We have made a couple of times, we made big changes, but consistency is good. I don't know. Within the competitive fly fishing community, I think there's kind of 3 groups of anglers, maybe just generically. Maybe the first group it's fun. It's actually a community. Most of the anglers that participate do it because it's a good time and they get to learn how to fish better. And really, I think back, that's kind of where I started. And I think most people who are in this sport kind of start there, where they're just like, hey, this fly fishing is fun for me. Again, they're looking for a community, and maybe not to equate it to a bar beer pong league, but something like that. It's more of a social endeavor, and I think that that's fantastic, and it brings a source of community. to the sport, and I think it's really useful. And then there's the kind of the, I don't know what I'd call middlings, but there's the people who are kind of in that transition, like they want to really get better, and they're really working on developing their skill sets because they actually see a path to advancing their own, personal accomplishments, maybe the chance of making the team. And then there's the ones that are really super dedicated to the sport, that the people who really set aside the time and resources necessary to make themselves the best have an opportunity to do so. And one of the frameworks, I should say, that exists is Fly Fishing Team USA, particularly in the sense that I think about the people on the team who are the best. That's what they do. Like they set aside 2, 3, sometimes 4 days a week, and they are not just they're not just going fishing. They're literally working to be the best at the situation. They don't just go and say, hey, I'm going to go throw nymphs today, or I'm going to go just throw streamers today. They walk up to the river and go, oh, situationally, what's the best way for me to catch that fish? And I think that's probably what separates them from I'll say the average, or even the better than average angler.
Right. They're more analyzing it on the stream. Yeah, I'm trying to, like, what does that look like? The Devin Olsons, the Lances, those, or even the guides, like outfitters, right? People that are doing it every day.
I mean, their career depends upon it to a certain extent. If you're a guide, right, you need to be able to put your clients on the fish that are in the river. It's incumbent upon you to know your river particularly well. I think maybe one thing that differentiates, and not to throw shade at anybody in any situation, but differentiates maybe the average guide from a Fly Fishing Team USA exceptional angler is that they're just because of the different types of rivers they fish all the time. Like I look at Lance or Devin, and I feel like maybe those two persons, with some exceptions, with some others as well, of course, but they're the closest friends to me, so I'll use them as examples. I feel like I could drop them on any river in the world, and they would figure out how to catch fish. I think that sets them apart. And a lot of people have this misconception that competition fly fishing is Euro nymphing. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. I mean, literally the farthest thing from the truth. And to be fair, nymphing is one of the most effective ways to put numbers of fish in the net. I will not deny that because I employ that technique myself as often as I can because I like catching fish. However, the best anglers can do it all. If I wanted to go have lessons on how to throw dries or streamers, I'd go talk to Lance. Is only 15 minutes from my house, but I'd go fish with Lance, right, if I wanted to learn that. But again, people have this broad misconception that Euro nymphing is competition fly fishing, and that's just the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah, no, it's true. And our closest connection is Pete Erickson has been doing some schools and stuff for us, and I've been on the water with him, and he reinforced that. It's like, hey, we did kind of a Euro nymphing school, but hey, we left it open to do whatever the situation brought us, right? And so you mentioned 2012, so you kind of got going there, and talk about the every 2 years. So is it every 2 years on the even year that you talk about how the selection process works?
We just rehashed the selection process post-COVID just because it made us reset. Like we literally didn't compete for a year plus, right? So it was like, hey, look, if we were going to reimagine how we would do this, what would that look like? And this came really from a lot of anglers, competitors, close friends. I mean, I'm not sure. There's a gentleman in New York that had a lot of influence on this named Ken Crane. He's great. He's a great competitor, really interested in advancing the sport. And so he was really essential to some of these things. But I got a lot of feedback from a lot of different people. But at that point, we basically broke the country into regions. Prior to that time, we more or less expected anybody at any time to really be able to pick up their gear and fly to Pennsylvania or North Carolina or Oregon or Utah, Idaho, Montana, whatever, right? And just go and do these competitions. And we kind of limited it to 24 persons at a time for two purposes. One was at that time we were still basically playing you got to get volunteers to measure all the fish game, which was very hard. Right, getting people to give away 2 days on a weekend to come watch you fish is a really big lift to ask people to do. And early days, we had a lot of success getting people to volunteer to do that. But to be fair, we kind of wore out our volunteer base.
Yeah,
and that's just natural. You use them too much, and they're like, I got better things to do on a Saturday. I've watched Devin fish enough times. I'm good. Anyway, so we shifted. So again, we did two things. We went to a regional-based organization. where we divided the country up into four kind of sections, northeast to southeast. We call it the Midwest, but it's basically the east side of the Rockies and then the west side of the Rockies, for all intents and purposes. And of course, some of the lines are a little wavy based on where populations of anglers are interested in the sport. So that was the first thing we did. And then what we did is within each of those regions, we basically create a regional scoring system. So you're only really fishing, quote unquote, against the anglers in your region. I don't have to fish against Pat Weiss in Utah. I fish against, now Devin, Wyoming's in the West region, so I have to fish against Devin. Others, again, very good anglers in the West. And of course, you live in the Midwest, you're fishing against anglers in the Midwest. That's like Cody Bergdorf and Jack Arnaud and a bunch of other really good anglers in that area, Chris Smith. Anyway, some great anglers there. If you fish in the Northeast, you got to fish against Pat Weiss. You fish in the Southeast, you're fishing against Michael Bradley. And those guys are dominant in their regions, generally speaking. But again, we segregate it all out so we can do that. Now, so there's a 2-year cycle that we call the regional cycle. So over the course of that 2 years, we in each region will hold, I don't know, something like 15 different events over the course of 2 years. Okay, so most of those events are one day. So you basically show up in the morning, you fish for the day, you go home that night. It's a very limited time commitment and frankly, resource commitment in terms of having to fly across the country. And that was really part of the purpose, is to mitigate the resource requirements in order to participate. We also wanted to make it as easy for people to kind of experiment with the sport as possible. If you want to give it a try on a weekend, you can.
Oh, you can. So on the regional meetings, like anybody can, do they have to qualify? How does that work?
Yeah, regional's wide open. And in fact, we don't even measure the fish. We try to remove as many barriers to participation as possible, frankly. So we used to measure every fish. We kind of just say, hey, look, you know what? We don't have to measure all the fish, right? Let's just count the fish that we catch at that level. Also, we do what we call competitor controlled at that level, right? Which means that we basically divide two groups. One group is fishing, the other group is watching. And so you're watching someone fish. I think there's two really important things to that. First of all, we don't have to get volunteers, which is fantastic. It makes it much easier to organize an event. And second, you get a chance to watch someone else fish.
Right. You can learn.
How often do you just sit back on the side of the river? Now, guides get to do this all the time, right? But, the average angler doesn't sit on the side of the river and watch another angler fish for 2 or 3 hours and really try to see what's actually going on. Where were they catching fish? What techniques were they using? And so one of the overarching concepts there is that if you can observe and you have the ability to glean knowledge there, that it'll actually increase your skills faster, right? So you can really get something from it. Whereas if you were only fishing, you don't get that opportunity. And actually, if you fished first, you watch the beat, we call it a beat, to stretch a river or the lake, you watch that same beat that you just fished. So you can go, oh, I caught a fish there, and there. And you watch that other angler come by, and maybe they're better than you, and maybe they're not quite as good as you, one way or the other. You may watch them go to that same piece of water that you just fished and catch 5 or 6 more fish. And you're like, okay, wow, I missed something. Like there's something I didn't get. Or they walk up and go, you know what? I bet Glade pounded that piece of water right there. I'm going to go fish some of the B water over here first, see if I can catch some fish in some of the B water, and then watch them go, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that there might have been a fish there. So I think there's a lot of good that comes from just observing other people fishing.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So, and what you're saying is, so events, you mentioned the 4 different regions. So if somebody was out there in the Northeast, how would they get involved if they wanted to join and comp?
Yeah, first of all, we have a basic membership process. So I think it's like $75. It covers your membership for a year. For all intents and purposes, it covers operational costs and insurance policies and allows us to function. Now, we deliberately don't charge for events. The organizer might have some kind of a minimal fee. So, they may say, hey, look, $20, I'm organizing, send me $20, we'll make it happen. But Fly Fishing Team USA actually doesn't take any additional funds for the regionals. Again, we want to make it accessible. In the West, I don't think we ever charge because we're trying to grow our population here. In some of the more established areas that have a deeper competition fly fishing crowd, they're a little more, again, mature in that sense. They charge $20 a person or $10 a person.
So is it everything west of the Rocky Mountains is the West region?
Yeah, it's going to be Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, West.
And then you rotate the states. Do you kind of rotate during the events, different, like the regionals, different states?
We don't really prescribe where they are. A lot of it is just based on where there's interest. So we kind of have a hub of interested parties in Utah, Idaho, and Oregon. Of course, there's Wyoming as well, but it's really just Devin, some of his friends in that area. They'll host 1 or 2 events a year. And I don't even like to call them competitions, by the way, I guess for various reasons. First of all, it has a bad connotation. Are we comparing people? Well, yes, of course. But there's no prizes, right? It's not like anyone's winning any money. And for purposes of definition for Forest Service and state permitting requirements, it's a nuanced conversation, but calling it a competition when it doesn't meet the definition of a competition, it creates a stigma or it's not clear. So I just call them events. That just like the Boy Scouts got together and went out fly fishing for a merit badge.
Okay, so basically you put these events together and you might have one in Idaho, or let's just say, Oregon, Utah, whatever, but you get together and do you do a call out? Like, I mean, is there a limit to the number of people who can join the event?
I mean, technically, no. We have a minimum, 8. 8's the minimum. So again, we can kind of get a bunch of buddies together and go fishing and have 80 together and make it all happen. And on the max side, we don't really have a constraint, but we do have a maximum number of points that we award, if that's the right way to say it, for an event. We do that just so that we have a level playing field across within the region. You don't want to have one event be worth way more points than another event because it diminishes interest in one and accentuates interest in another. Right. So we just try to keep it even, Steven, 12 points. So 12 is the average. That means 6 anglers are fishing, 6 anglers are watching.
Yeah, I see.
And there's another reason for that. It's low impact, right? We don't want to go and stretch out over 6 miles of a river and then have it be where there's a maximum amount of conflict between, we call them recreational anglers or guides for that matter. We don't want to be in people's way any more than they want us in their way. So we try to have as small of a footprint as possible, frankly, just so that we're minimizing any potential, I don't want to call it conflict, but we're not looking for a fight. We're looking to stay low profile.
Yeah, you want to keep it low key for sure. So that makes sense. So basically you have these regionals and every 2 years, so 2 years you go back and look at the points of whoever were the people involved, and then you decide, okay, here's the people that were the best 15.
Yeah, in each region. Well, so we pick the best in each region. And then we go into what we call the interregional session or season for all intents and purposes. And that's going to be, again, the time period isn't specifically defined to 2 years or something like that, but we're going to try to squeeze them all within like a 8 to 9 month period. And what that means is that each region will host a interregional. So the West will do one, the Midwest one, Northeast, Southeast. Everybody does one. And then what we do is we take the top X anglers from each region and we invite them to those interregionals. So that's like an invitation only. And so now what we're doing is we're pitting the best anglers in each region against each other to try to suss out who's the best amongst them.
At one spot, are you doing like 4 interregion and all these people are at the same 4 interregion?
What we do is we allow them to go to 3 of the 4 and we allow them to count 2.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. Just because, hey, sometimes you don't always get the best stretch of river. Okay. The draw matters. There's some luck in this. This is not 100% pure skill-based activity. Of course, you got to be a really good angler, but you also, if you don't get the best beat, hey, the best you could do is maybe 3rd place or 4th place on that particular stretch of water. So we want to give people an opportunity to maybe toss one of their poor scores out. Now, they don't have to go to all 3, but they can count up to 2, to be very basic about it. So we basically have an amount of based on how you did in your region, you get a ranking and you get a score based on that ranking. And then depending on how you do within the interregionals, you have a accumulation of points at the interregional level. And then what we do at the end of those 2 kind of pieces of the process, then we have a national championship. That national championship will be, we do at that point, we go down the list. We say, who's the best? And you just start counting down. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to take the top 40 in the nation.
Okay.
And so whoever the top 40 are, we invite those. And of course, some of them can't make it. So maybe we stretch it down to 46 or 48 or whatever. So we're just going to take the top anglers, competitive anglers in the nation, invite them all to a national championship. And then from there, we will take the sum of all their scores, again, nationals, interregionals, and regional. And then the best of the best make the team. And then the rest we thank for coming. We have a banquet at the end and we do some drawings and, give away some rods and prizes and thanks everybody for coming. It's, and basically just a celebration.
Yeah, you have a good time. So and then you also have within this, you've got the different levels, right? You've got the youth. Talk about that. Who are the different groups?
Yeah. So layered on top of, or maybe adjacent to on top of, depending on how you want to say it, the Fly Fishing Team USA, there's actually what's called the U.S. Angling Confederation, which has the organization that facilitates the World Fly Fishing Championships. So as you note, there are 4 categories within the fly fishing championship world. At the international level, it's called FIPSMoosh. I could drop you a link on there for your listeners to check that out. But basically, it's called FIPSMoosh. They're organized worldwide. They're organized for a year. As you note, it's a youth. They call it the ladies, the seniors, which we would call like adults, and then they call it the masters, which we would call like over 50 range, which I now fit in that category.
Yeah, right. Seniors and masters.
So I actually did my first personal fishing in the World Fly Fishing Championship this year in the Czech Republic. So that was fun. That was a good experience. But yes, there's 4 disciplines within fly fishing. Again, youth, women, masters, and seniors that are selected. Now, those teams, again, there's not a direct connection between Fly Fishing Team USA and the U.S. Angling Confederation, though we have a nice, happy working relationship. For all intents and purposes, the best of the best within the within Fly Fishing Team USA National Championship team. From amongst that team, the U.S. Angling Confederation selects the best anglers to go represent the United States at the World Fly Fishing Championships. And the same thing would be true of the ladies and the youth and the masters as well.
And how are and maybe talk about that, because we've got a couple events now as we're talking. It's kind of January 2025. We've got, I think some events coming up here. So talk about where the next events are potentially going to be held.
Yeah. So last 2024, the United States submitted a bid to host the World Fly Fishing Championships for the youth and again, they call it the ladies, for 2024, and the seniors, again, the adults, in 2026. And they asked me to be what they call the international organizer. So I've got my fingerprints all over this, for better or for worse.
Right. Yeah. You're one of the head guys behind this whole thing.
Yeah. And again, not to go backwards in this conversation, but I am the captain of Fly Fishing Team USA. So I kind of do all the organizational aspects. We have a board of directors. I'm on the board. But I kind of do all the day-to-day maintenance of Fly Fishing Team USA, I guess, if that's the right way to say it. And I'm also the fly director for the U.S. Angling Confederation. So I kind of wear 2 hats there. So I'm involved with the Fly Fishing Team USA organization at a leadership level. And then I'm also heavily involved in the U.S. Angling Confederation.
And what is it? Remind us again, what's the difference between the U.S. Angling Confederation and the Team USA, or the...
Fly Fishing Team USA was established back in like 1980 something. There was a time where it gets pretty complicated, not to go into the nuanced details. Okay, so it doesn't matter. We don't need to go there. But the difference is primarily the U.S.-based competitive fly fishing organization is Fly Fishing Team USA. U.S. Angling Confederation has the entry point, or they provide the access point for all of the fishing world championship events. So it's not just fly fishing. It's ice fishing, it's kayak fishing, it's predator fishing, offshore, it's carp, they have a new event called street fishing.
Oh, okay. So there's a U.S. Angling Confederation so when we talk, I always think Team USA because it's fly fishing, right? But there's also Team USA and like all these other things.
Well, again, they're not technically called Team USA. I think it's USA fly fishing. So it's a little different different syntax around the words, right? But in terms of the world representation of the United States, they are the organization without question, right? So, but again, they do bass. So, competition bass fishing is normal.
So now is competition bass fishing, everything we think of with all the sponsored and all that stuff with the big bass events, is that under U.S. Angling Confederation?
So many of the anglers who are the best in the country that are involved in the Bassmaster Championship, or I can't remember all the different names of them, but those anglers that participate in those competitive tournaments, money tournaments, many of them, or some of them, I should say, are also interested in representing the United States in the World Bass Championships. Same thing with ice fishing. Same thing with all sorts of different types of fishing. I think there's like 16, 17, 18 different teams. I probably should know that.
Yeah. Right. So there's a lot going on. That's the amazing thing. There's a ton. I mean, this is what you realize is it's not just Fly Fishing Team USA. I mean, there is all sorts of stuff, and it sounds like it's all intertwined. So there's a Bassmaster champion that's out there who made whatever millions of dollars on the bass circuit. He's also maybe fishing for Team USA in the bass.
That's exactly. And so the relationship between U.S. Angling Confederation fly fishing discipline and Fly Fishing Team USA is similar. Fly fishing team, again, not for profit, just out there, competitive fly fishing, developing anglers. Okay. U.S. Angling Confederation, again, they are the access to the World Fly Fishing Championships. So they have a structured nonprofit organization where they are advocating for the sports and, again, providing the access to the World Fly Fishing Championships for us.
I see. That makes sense. Okay. So then back to 2024, you guys submitted. So you're trying to get, what is the potential that the events are going to, where are they going to be in 2025, 26?
We won the bids for both, so yay to us. Of course, that's like a yay. Oh crap! That means we got to get ready, and that means I had a lot of work to do. But of course, because if I was going to organize it, I knew where I really wanted to have it. I've got a cabin up in the Island Park, Idaho area, and if you think they call it the Golden Triangle of fly fishing, right? It's that kind of corner of Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, right? That's the Golden Triangle of fly fishing. And I was like, wow, I wonder if there's a way that we can make that work. I got to it. I started calling around to the Forest Service and the different state institutions that regulate fishing in the different states. And I have been, at least thus far, successful in securing I don't have all the permits in hand, but I basically have an affirmation from the organizations that I will have them. Submitted all the paperwork for such permits, so it looks like things will be right on task. But we've got a stretch, I guess maybe just to be clear, backing up just a tad, there's actually 5 different venues that are used for each fly fishing world championship. So venue is basically a piece of water, right? Just very basic terminology there. We've selected the 5 different venues. We got Hebgen Lake in Montana. We have a private lake, which you may be familiar with. I know Pete loves this piece of water. It's called Sheridan Lake in in Idaho, in eastern Idaho, up there, just in the Island Park area, and that's fantastic. I love that place. But I tell you what, I never knew how good Hebgen Lake was until I really started fishing it this last couple of years. And then we were going to fish a stretch along the Warm River, which is a tributary to the Henry's Fork. We'll fish the Grays River, which is a tributary to the Snake. South Fork of the Snake, I should say, to be clear. And then we have a defined stretch on the Henry's Fork that the Forest Service is looking to give us a permit to. So that was interesting. Again, go back to the some of the principles that we had previously, which is we don't want to be in anyone's way. A lot of other countries, they will close the water to everybody else so that no one else can fish it for the world championships. That's not the case for us. The Forest Service ain't going to be like, or the states aren't going to be like,
no,
yeah, we're not going to close the Henry's Fork. Nope, not going to happen. So we had to be really deliberate about which stretch of the river we going to be able to use. We're just really careful about that. Again, we don't want to be in anybody's way. We're just trying to be as low conflict as possible. We're out there for the same purposes as everybody else. We are interested in conservation. We are interested in having a good time fishing. We're interested in catching a lot of fish. We do our best to catch fish quickly and safely, get them in the net as quick as possible, measure them, because that's what we do, as quick as we can, and get them back in the water as fast as possible so we can go catch more fish. I think everybody has those same basic guiding principles in fly fishing, right? We care for the water, we care for the fish, and we want to catch lots of them.
Perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so that's the venues. And then when potentially could the event start?
Yeah, so the actual opening ceremony, so the Ladies World Fly Fishing Championship. So it'll be the 4th Women's or Ladies World Fly Fishing Championship and the 22nd Youth World Fly Fishing Championship. That we'll have our opening ceremonies on July 12th. And the last day of the event will be on the 19th of July.
There you go.
Now, someone will ask, why in the world would you do it in July? Well, it's because of the kids, really, when it comes right down to it. Yeah, they're in school. It's very difficult to get, they're traveling from all over the world. We're not just catering to a few anglers that are local here. We got to ask people from all over the world to travel to Idaho to go represent their countries at the World Fly Fishing Championships. And so we had to pick a time that worked for everybody.
Right.
And in just looking at I worked with the local travel bureaus that are in the area and said, when's the best time, for you guys? And we kind of picked that week between in Idaho there, of course, after the 4th of July, but there's another big holiday on the 24th of July weekend called Pioneer Days. And it gets a lot of traffic at those 2 weekends, of course. So we just said, hey, let's plop this time right in the middle. And that seemed like the best time to pick. So we did.
So, and then will the youth and women's be concurrent kind of during the same time?
Kind of. They're not fishing against each other, but they are fishing basically at the same time. Probably what we will do is divide up the women. So the women may fish in the morning and the youth will fish in the afternoon. They'll be fishing, at least on the rivers, they'll be fishing different stretches of the river so that one piece of water doesn't get beat up continually. And frankly, for people who have concerns about events of this type, they're only on the water for like 3 hours. So it's not like we're out there all day long beating up the river, right? We're literally there. We'll start fishing around 9 for the ladies in the morning, and around noon. And then the youth will come by in the afternoon, probably between 2 and 5, and fish for another 3 hours. Again, a different stretch of river. So not even on the same water. So again, our preference is to not, we're not looking for a negative impact on the fishery, right? We're looking for, we're out there just catching fish.
That makes sense. Okay, so that's 12 through the 19th. So if somebody wanted to get involved, maybe volunteer, or just check out the events, what would you recommend there?
If there's one message that I wanted to get across for today's podcast is that, hey, we need help. We need volunteers to help at this event. We need something between 50 and 70 people every day, to come help. And what does help look like? Well, I mean, for the most part, it looks like, observing the anglers fish, right? So again, there's a 3-hour stretch where you're going to be sitting there on the bank. They're going to be catching fish. They're going to bring the fish over to you in the net. They have to keep the fish wet. We have to fish with barbless flies, right? So all those good things.
So a big chunk of these 50, 70 are people that are watching. The cool thing about this is, like you said, is that you could literally be a person to watch the greatest anglers, right, in the country fishing. And I'm sure you would learn a lot just watching, right?
And in particular this summer, again, that'll be the ladies and the youth. So I'd love to get women to volunteer to come and watch.
Right.
I wouldn't turn around any man to come and help either, but some of these women anglers are just, I don't think they get enough credit. They are some of the absolutely fantastic lady anglers, both on our national team, but particularly from some of the other world teams as well, right? The last 3 world championships were all won by the Czech women. I'd put these Czech women, they live and die by this sport. They love it. And I'd put them up against most of the guys that I know.
No kidding.
They probably whip their pants off of them.
Right. Well, it's cool. I was just doing a little kind of video summary of we're kind of doing our end of the year thing right now. It's kind of end of 2024. And I did a summary of the most listened to podcast episodes. Well, one of them, which was really interesting, was Maxine McCormick, who I had Chris Korich, who's her coach, right? And she's the 12-year-old, 13-year-old that won all the casting championships.
Yeah, casting.
Right? And so it doesn't matter, male, female, small, little, big, whatever. It's like literally if you have the skills, you can win. You can beat anybody.
Absolutely. It's, and again, some ladies on our world team in the USA are, again, absolutely bonkers good. We held a joint event with Fly Fishing Team USA and the women's national team selection back in September. And, some of these ladies were in the top 10.
Exactly.
So they're really skilled anglers. So don't discount them, of course, right? Because women can do, when it comes to fly fishing, except for maybe some overall general height advantages, women are just as many skills and capabilities as the guys do, right? When it comes right down to it.
That's totally true. And then the youth is a thing that's been going on for quite a while too. I know the youth, they've been doing pretty well. Talk about that.
This year, in the Czech Republic, so the youth team was in the Czech Republic this year fishing the World Championships, and they dominated. They swept the podium, first, second, and third place individually. And of course, you would expect that means they also took home the team gold. I would say in that particular case as well, consistency is key. They've got a coach in Josh Miller who has kind of set up a system with them to kind of nurture, to develop their skill sets. They've got a manager, Jess Westbrook, who's great. So those two guys have basically created the system, and maybe calling back to, maybe 10 years ago when there was a couple other guys running the youth team that really just set up a system that really developed the skills of some of these really good, impressionable youth anglers. The nice thing about youth compared to adults, it's like teaching an old dog new tricks is tough. But these youth, man, they are just some of the best. They're some of the best anglers out there. They're so good.
Yeah. And what is the youth? When do you leave the youth?
Well, you can no longer fish in the World Fly Fishing Championships if your 19th birthday happened in the year of the championship. So if you turned 18 in the year of championship, you can still compete. But if you turn 19, I think that's the rule. But basically, I think if you're 19, maybe if you're 18 during the year, maybe that's what it is. So if your birthday's January 2nd, you turn 19, you can still compete in that year's World Fly Fishing Championship as a youth, but otherwise you'd not be eligible.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's basically adults.
So they are in it for a very discrete set amount of time.
Do they start? What's the youngest youth?
I want to say you have to be 12. I don't know that that's even. I think that's true, but again, there's some pretty significant disadvantages. If you're too small. It's like it's hard to wade deep if you're really short. And not all 12-year-olds are short because there's some super tall 12-year-olds, but there's some principles that tend to hold true in terms of wading and being able to get the angles on the fish that you want to get.
So that's July. So if people wanted to learn more, where should we send them?
Yeah, so there's a couple different places to go. First is the FIPS website.
How do you spell that? The FIPS.
I just call it colloquially a FIPS, but it's FIPS, FIPS. And then it's got a hyphen, Moosh, MOUCHE. So it's fipsmoosh.com.
Okay.
And if you check there, you'll find different links for the World Fly Fishing Championships. And what you'll see is that for next year, there'll be a specific website set up for the youth and one set up for the women. So again, while they're concurrently being held, they are technically considered two different championships. So again, there'll be two links there. And then the third one, which is, so again, I'd love people to go there, but the third one is one that I'd really like people to get to so they can get some information as we can start building a volunteer base, is usangling.org, USANGLING, so usangling.org. And then you can go under the fly fishing teams link, and then underneath the women link and the youth link, there should be a section there for the World Championship. So I'm just looking at the women's one right now, and it'll say 2025 Women's Fly Fishing World Championship. At the bottom of that page, you'll find a link to sign up to volunteer.
Oh, okay. Perfect. And then that'll be in 25. And then 26, there's the actual seniors are going to be. And what about, and the Masters too, or is that different?
The Masters, that event hasn't been awarded yet. So I intend to put in a bid for the 2028 version of that. So I hope to be able to get everybody back here for the 2028.
Yeah. And does the Masters go skip, or how does that work typically? Or like, because I know Pete, I remember when Pete, we were talking to him, I think he won the gold medal up in British Columbia, right? A while back.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he crushed it up there. Yeah, he did. That was last year.
Actually. Oh, that was just last year.
Well, sorry, that was 23. Yeah, so I'm still thinking 23, 24. But
so that's 23. So when is the next seniors world?
So the next seniors world is in the Czech Republic at the end of May.
Oh, so it's 25.
25. Yep, May 25. So the senior team was in France in 2024. We took bronze, which I think was a incredible accomplishment by our team. I was super proud of those guys. They just really came together as a team and fished super, super well. Michael Bradley took an individual fourth place, and everybody was in the top 50. That's actually a great accomplishment at the world fly fishing level.
It is. And are these worlds every year?
Yes, every year. That's right.
For everybody, for youth, women, everything, it's every year.
Yeah. I think this next year is the 44th World Fly Fishing Championship for the seniors. Like I mentioned, it's the 22nd for the youth and the 4th for the ladies. I think the Masters is like the 16th.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is an annual thing that somebody like these, Devin, whoever else is on the team, I mean, they're traveling a lot every year. They're getting ready for a big event.
The burden is heavy, right? And I guess from that perspective, right, we are all effectively self-funded. We've had some very generous persons in the past that have helped to fund the team, and so we're super grateful for all the work all the money that they really put into helping our team develop. We couldn't have done it without them. And right now we're all self-funded. So we're not really great fundraisers, but if there are people who are interested in helping, we would, whether it's industry sponsors or again, generous individuals, we'd be very grateful for any financial contributions that anyone would be willing to put our way.
Well, we'll put links out to all that in the show notes. And so you're on the Masters. So will you be fishing? Are you out there? How does that look? Are you fishing with Pete and all that?
Yeah, I fished in my first Masters World Championship in Czech Republic this last year. I spent a shocking one day in first place. So my first 2-3 days were pretty good. And then I had a bad experience on one of the venues that kind of dropped me down. I finished in 8th place overall, but I still felt pretty good about that, being my first World Fly Fishing Championship. This next year will be in Spain. So I'm looking forward to that as well with 5 other teammates. So that'll be a fantastic experience.
And who are the 5 teammates with you?
So again, these are all guys that are over 50. So Pat Weiss, I'm super looking forward to that. I had no pressure on Pat, but I kind of expect him to get a medal. Chris Smith, who's our team president and our team captain, his wife is actually on the women's team. So they're like legit, world championship fly fishing family right there. And then we have Matt Stadina, who's a guide up in Vermont. We have JC, or I call him JC, but John Cardron, who's in Texas. Let's see, I got to make sure I count them all. Me, Chris, Pat, Matt, JC. Oh, I'm missing one. There's 6 of us.
Well, either way, we can put it in the show notes.
Oh, Sean Crocker. I can't believe I missed Sean. Sean is like one of my best buddies in the Pittsburgh, PA area.
Oh, yeah, Sean. Okay, so we got those. And will there be the similar for women and youth? Will there be the 5 or 6 people there?
Yeah. Again, there's 5 anglers fish every day, so we really should be picking the 5 best anglers to fish those 5 venues on any given day. It's really about team performance, not individuals, but yeah, there's 5 anglers that fish, and there's typically 1 alternate that would travel with the team. In the case that they offer some specific skill or, it's a chance that someone could get hurt or injured or be sick or something.
Yeah. Has that ever happened? Has anybody ever been injured?
Internationally, yes. On our team, not in recent time, but we have deliberately swapped out anglers where we've said, "Hey, look, yeah, this person is going to be able to fish that venue better than that other person," and it's no diss, right? It's just, hey, let's put the best angler on the water. We want to, again, the team medal is way more important than an individual medal, so we want to put our best anglers out there.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So that's all coming up here, pretty much right around the corner. So like we said, I mean, this is going to be cool, and I'm excited. I think that I would definitely love to get out there and check this out. What else should we know about before we get out of here today?
Oh boy, let's see. We are seeking out sponsors for the World Championship as well. So again, if you are interested in possibly helping to sponsor, or if you know either individuals or corporations that would like to help sponsor the World Championship events, I'd love to talk to you. You'll have my information provided so people can reach out to me if necessary or if they have interest. So that would be something that I'm super interested in. We can't do it without money. That's a very expensive time of year. And we actually FIPS actually places limits on the registration fees just for the very purpose that we're not prohibiting certain countries from being able to participate. We want to keep the barriers to entry as low as possible. So I have a limit to the amount of money that I can get from registration fees. And so any deficiency to cover the budget is something that I've got to find ways to close the gap.
You got to come up. So all the hotels, basically everything, food, you name it.
Food, transportation, opening, closing ceremonies, hotels, you name it, all that stuff matters. And of course, I want to make sure I treat the volunteers well. So we'll be putting together volunteer packages, where they get shirts and hats and things like that. So again, they're the most important people at the event. We can't host these events without volunteers, and I want to make sure that we do the very best we can to make them feel that we were grateful for all that they were able to contribute.
Yeah, perfect. Well, let's take it out here real quick with our kind of tips and trip segment here. We've been talking about, it's awesome because we haven't ever covered this, the full events, and that's awesome. You're out there competitively fishing. Maybe let's go to Euro nymphing. That's always a interesting one.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. So somebody here is listening and they're wanting to get into it. Maybe they've done a little bit. What are a few tips you're telling somebody who kind of wants to improve their game?
Well, first of all, if someone just really wants to get into it, I'd say look up Lance Egan, Devin Olson, Gilbert. Gilbert, I love Gilbert. He's one of the greatest guys out there. They put that series together for advanced techniques and even beyond nymphing.
Yeah, it's called Modern? What was that?
Modern nymph. Yeah, modern.
Yeah, and I think that's super. I think it's only like $50 for that whole course or something.
Yeah,
like that.
that's the best in fly fishing. That is probably the best money you will spend. I guess to be specific, if you're interested in some of these, I don't want to call them non-traditional, but if you want to get beyond throwing a dry fly, right, and you really just want to get excited about fly fishing and being able to catch fish, I think that's absolutely the best $50 you'll spend, bar none, hands down, no questions asked, in my opinion.
Yep. Okay. And then what about if you're on the water? What's that look like? Are you you're not doing, so you've never guided, right? You've more just.
No, I'm just an average Joe that just kind of.
Do you think that? Well, I would say average Joe. If you think about the guide versus I always compare it to, because I kind of talked a lot with Devin and Pete and stuff like that. But you're in that same range. The difference between a guide and you guys, I would think, is pretty similar. In fact, you probably have skills that guides might not even have, right?
There's probably some truth to that, but heck, a lot of guides have a lot of skills that I don't, like patience, understanding.
Right. Well, but if you were in that situation and kind of doing the guiding and somebody was sitting there and you were trying to help them, kind of maybe hook a fit, what are you telling them before they're getting into the water on the Euro? Like if got their Euro, they got their setup and they want to go out there and find some fish, how do they have more success?
Set on everything.
Yeah, you got to set on everything.
And set it like you intend to catch a fish. I think that's one of the things that people probably do the most poorly when they're first learning how to, and again, I'll speak specifically in terms of the Euro nymphing styles broadly, because there's lots of little different nuanced techniques there. But I think that the one thing that people do the most poorly, I'm talking about when I've worked with my kids or anything, and I'm like, set it like you mean it. Like, don't just like lift the rod a little bit, like really set that thing, because I think I've heard, Kelly Gallup even say this, as much he has his opinions about Euro nymphing, right? I think one of the things I think I heard him say recently, to give him total credit for this, is that you don't catch a fish unless you set on it. Something like that, right? And I think, and maybe I'm attributing that quote to the wrong person, but
Either way, I think it's true, right? And how do you set? What is a good set? Like, how would you
oh
describe?
boy, it's the right direction with the right amount of effort and the right speed, I guess. It's really just that. It's one of those things you almost have to be holding someone's hand to do it right.
Yeah, you have to be there, right? Well, I'm thinking of it like if you're fishing in a river, the river you're on like river right. The river's going from left to right. You're maybe you're nymphing, and so a fish hooks it. You're setting downstream in that situation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, again, down and up or down. It depends on the situation exactly. If there's a tree behind you, you probably ought to reconsider that.
Yeah. Well, Gilbert, I was looking to these because I kind of did a little summary. I did like these were our most listened to episodes. Gilbert was in the top 10. And one of his tips, it was like, it was kind of like common mistakes. I'll put a link to the YouTube video I did, but it was like common mistakes to avoid. And one of them for Gilbert was like people, yeah, just like we're talking about, they're not playing the fish. After you set it and you hook it, you're not playing it right. And he was talking about how you want to have your rod upstream and you want to keep it low, right? And it's going to help you land more fish, right? There's all these little things.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best instructional on landing fish is probably one of Devin Olson's videos. He has little tips and tricks where he goes through how to land fish. And probably one of the biggest differences that I see between, again, the average fisherman or fisher and someone who's doing competition fishing or this is that how the efficiency at which they can play and land fish. I watch people that aren't in the sport that I participate in, that can hook a fish and land a fish and let the fish go and be fishing again in a minute. And I watch other people who will fight that same fish for 3 or 4 minutes. And just contextually, that's not good for the fish. Like, get that fish in the net, get it back in the water as soon as you can. Right. So I think that's a big thing. Maybe the one biggest pointer that I've learned, I shouldn't say biggest, but one big thing that I learned over the years doing different events that I've participated in is being aware of where you're standing when you're fishing. I can't tell you how many times that you go to set the hook and let's just say there's not a fish there, but you set it into a tree behind you. You've never done that, I'm sure. But just being aware. Maybe one of my biggest lessons learned. It cost me a first place at a competition one time. Well, I was fishing. I think we were in Wyoming on, I can't remember what river it was, but it was not putting up any fish. The river was blown out. It was flooded, super muddy. I walked up to it and I just kind of stood there and looked at it and went, I don't know what the crap I'm going to do here. No one had been catching any fish. I had like a squirmy worm on it. You know what those are. I'm standing on the bank above the river and I'm just kind of just nonchalantly like, I don't know. I'm like 6 feet above the river and just being stupid. I'm in an event. I'm in a competition. So if I catch a fish, it matters. My first cast, I plop that thing in there and a fish, he eats that on my first cast. And I'm standing 6 feet above the bank thinking, what the crap am I going to do now? Right. I fight it for like 30 seconds trying to figure out how to get down to the riverbank. And then he pops off and I didn't touch another fish. And no one else got a fish. That would have been the difference maker for me. But again, just be aware. Like, you can make your fishing life so much easier if you're just cognizant of where the trees are. Look over your shoulder, right? Sometimes the brim of your hat blocks your view. Cock your head a little bit to the side. Just be cognizant of your surroundings. I think your fly fishing experience can be much better if you're just aware.
Well, and I got a couple random ones to toss out at you, and then we'll take it out of here. So one of them, and I think I might have asked Pete this in the past, but when you look at the seniors and the masters, I know there's a lot of similarities, but who's winning that battle? Team USA seniors versus masters. Is that a tough one?
Boy, the old guard versus the youth and energy. It reminds me when I used to play racquetball with my uncle. Like, he was old and slow, but he was way more accurate. Finesse mattered. Using your time wisely mattered a lot more to the old guys who don't move quite as quick, right? So I guess in terms of who's best, boy, that's tough. I mean, you're going experience versus youth.
Yeah. So either of those teams could win in any given day.
I think so. I mean, it's tough, right? It's almost a toss-up because I look at Pete and Brett. So Brett won gold medal a few years back, and Pete won in 23. Both those guys they've been on Fly Fishing Team USA. They've competed in World Fly Fishing Championships for years and years and years. I guess in terms of how much I look at who's working the hardest to be the best, the senior team right now is probably working the hardest to be the best. But those guys have a wealth of knowledge and understanding that can't be replicated, right? So it's a collection of knowledge over decades. and decades of fly fish, a world championship fly fishing experience. And I pick on, Jeff Currier, Brett, Pete, Lauren Williams. I mean, Mike Sexton. Those guys were kind of the core for quite a good number of years. And they're excellent anglers. They're just really good. Again, you can't replicate that knowledge. It's just knowledge versus energy and youth. I mean, I watch some of the guys on the senior team right now, and I'm like, I can't believe how fast Cody Bergdorf can make his way up and down the river. That dude's a train. It's unbelievable. He's so fast in the river. It's crazy. And that matters too, because time, your efficiency on the water matters. Anyway, that's a really terrible answer, but yes.
No, I love it. I think that's I think it's a hard question to answer, which is great. And then as you look out, you mentioned mid-July. What does that look like? Maybe have you been getting ready for the food, restaurants? How does that look? Are you setting that up, or are people on their own out there as far as the competition?
Okay, so during the event, we feed everybody the whole time.
Which is 2 days, right?
Oh, no, it's 5 days. So it's one venue a day. So every day, one angler on every team goes to one venue. The next day, they go to the next venue, and then the next. So they just rotate around. So you just do this little, you just complete the circle. So it's a 5 days.
So they got breakfast, lunch, and dinner that you're basically in charge of.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a lot of organization just for food.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I was going with this. I was trying to pick your Raylo. Like, what does that look like? Are you going out to dinner each night, or is this more like room service?
Our host hotel is going to be the Holiday Inn and Suites in Idaho Falls, and they just happen to have a built-in restaurant. So yay for us, makes it super easy. The practical reality is that the anglers will go out and fish, they'll have breakfast, they'll get fed lunch somewhere out on the road, after their session or before their session starts. And then at the end of the day, they want to come back and get ready for the next day. And so we want to make their dining experience as simple and fast and as efficient as possible so that they can spend most of their time preparing for the next day. So we'll actually be eating at the hotel restaurant. So shout out to the Holiday Inn Express or Holiday Inn Suites in Idaho Falls and Burger Theory, which is the restaurant that's built into the hotel.
Perfect. Good stuff. Okay, awesome. Well, that sounds perfect. And then, I mean, this is a full on, so this week event, and have you planned and implemented, been at your current position in putting an event like this together?
Well, this is my first one.
And the other question is with that, is there somebody that was doing this before that's in there helping with a little bit of the transition?
So we've had 2 senior world championships in the United States. We've also had a couple of youth world championships. I don't believe we've ever hosted the Masters. The first world championship that we hosted here in America was in 97. That was based out of Jackson. And then we held it in 2016 based in Colorado. John Knight actually organized that one. He did a great job there. But that was nearly 10 years ago.
So that's what we realized. Yeah, even though there's events every year with the World Championships, I mean, it's more like every 20 years that they're hosted. Well, every 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was 20-year span and then basically a 10-year span. I'd like to get us in the rotation. Some countries are in the rotation because they're nationally set up.
Oh, like who are those? Like Czech Republic?
The Czech Republic, they could host a world championship every year if they wanted to. They just have a natural set of venues that they use all the time. Of course, that gets kind of old because you just get really good at fishing that water. The really hard thing about the United States is that we're such a big country relative to many of the European nations, at least. It's really hard because most places we don't have water. The water rights situation in America is very different than the water rights situation in Europe. They could literally just close the water for the World Championships. For the most part, we can't do that out here. So we've got to be really careful. And again, I'm trying to be very deliberate about the waters we've selected so that we're not stepping on anybody's toes, and we want to be respectful. I'll be doing hopefully a series of introductions to this at local Trout Unlimited chapters and any other interested angling parties. I'll be having some conversations with them. I'd like to get as many volunteers and as much support as we can.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. No, it's good. I'm excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And we'll, like we said, maybe remind us again, where is that best place that we should send people to if they want to?
Yeah, it's so there's 2 places. One is the Phipps Moosh website. And the other one is at usangling.org. If you check on the women's fly fishing team and the youth fly fishing team, you should be able to find a link there to the World Fly Fishing Championships where you can volunteer. Also, you should check out our cool logo. We just got this completed a couple weeks back. So I think our logo is really sweet. Lots of symbolisms in it. We've got like cutthroat trout. We've got like the golden triangle. We got little pins for the little stars for different venues, a little red, white, and blue. It's a great looking logo. So take a check on that. As we get closer, we'll probably have some world championship stuff that's for sale for people if they're interested in buying things like that. But really want to create as much excitement about this event as possible. I think there's a lot of naysayers out there that don't like competitive fly fishing. I guess maybe some of my parting thoughts would be, hey, look, we just want to fish. And most of us just want to get better. Anything you do in life that's worth doing, whether you want to lose weight or get better at riding a bicycle or shooting the basketball or playing pickleball, whatever, you go out and do it and you measure yourself. And I think that it just in general, quote unquote, competition fly fishing is just a way to measure yourself against people. And also in those same ventures in life or those sports in life that you enjoy the most. Again, people who ride road bikes, the reason why those road bikes are better and faster than they were 10 years ago and 20 years ago is because there are people who are willing to put forth the time, effort, and resources necessary to make the sport better, both in terms of equipment and techniques. And I look at competition angling and fly fishing in this particular case as that same mechanism. And, I could walk into any fly shop in the country and look around at the fly selection, at the line selections, at the rods, the reels, at the equipment. I can see in every situation where those anglers who have been willing to dedicate their lives to the sport have brought that benefit to every other person in this country and the world who's interested in fly fishing. Again, while you may not like it and you don't want to do it yourself, I would encourage you to keep an open mind in terms of understanding that many, not all, but many of the advancements in the sport that we love the most comes from those people who are willing to compete and put their lives into finding ways and techniques and methods to make it better, easier, faster for them to catch fish.
Exactly. Well said. Perfect, Glade. Well, I think we'll leave it there for this one. And thanks again for all your time. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully on the water there in 2025 and beyond, man.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, if you want to show up and do interviews and fun stuff, we could set you up to chat with people while you're there that week if you want to show up.
All right, cool. All right, Glade, we'll be in touch.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, catch you later.
All right. If you have ever wondered about the events and what a World Championships is all about, what it's like, now is the time coming to near you in this country. If you are in the area or if you want to fly in to check this out, volunteer potentially, and then watch some of the best in the world, you can do that right now. Check in with Glade. We'll have some links in the show notes so you can do that and get information right now. And I hope you have a chance to check out some of our other events we have going this year with trips. We're going to be heading not only to this location, but other locations out in this part of the western part of the U.S. So stay tuned on that. And I just want to let you know we're going to get out of here right now, but I hope you have a great evening. Hope you have a great morning or a wonderful afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for checking in with Travel today. I hope you can live that dream trip or just get off in your neck of the woods and explore, and I hope you experience that road less traveled.